All right, warm welcome, everybody. Warm welcome to today's practice on Zoom, on YouTube, on Instagram, wherever you are in the world. It's your time to meet yourself. It's your time to settle in, and let's practice together. It's hard to quite clearly define what's happening here. It's not exactly a meditation. It's not exactly a guided meditation. It's not exactly a teaching, but something's happening. So I don't think we have to bother trying to name it. Somehow I'm getting called to show up, and you're getting called to show up as well. And I think that's good enough. It doesn't have to fit into any perfect box, as long as you're getting something out of it. Or even if you're not sure you're getting something out of it, but you feel like coming. In fact, someone told me today that they use this as a lullaby to fall asleep. Why not? When so many people can't sleep, if this puts you to sleep, why not? Somebody once asked the Dalai Lama, what's the highest meditation? He said, sleep. In today's world, maybe you need sleep more than meditation. First get your sleep, then you meditate. If you're sleep deprived, then how are you going to meditate? So the theme for today is non-interference. Non-interference. And I'm going to add non-interference with love. And let's see where this takes us. Non-interference with love. So you could be seated, you could be lying down, you could have your eyes open or closed. This is your time. Let's get going. So one reason I've chosen the topic non-interference is one can never really be sure what is the right thing to do for someone. One can never be entirely sure what is best for someone, can we? I love these two disclaimers of spirituality. Just because it works for you does not mean it'll work for someone else. And just because you think it works for you doesn't really mean it works for you. I really love this teaching. So just because something is working for me, I can't assume it's going to work for you. That's the first one. And just because I think it's working for me, if I get really honest, I have to check, is it really working for me, or am I just deluding myself? I find these two things help me be more honest. I once wrote on Facebook years back that, dear God, please save the world from all those who are trying to save the world. Dear God, please save the world from all those who are trying to save the world. Sometimes we can be so sure that what we're doing is for the best, but we never really know, do we? So to me, this is quite an advanced lesson. What we are exploring today is not something which I expect everybody will immediately understand or resonate with. But bear with me and just explore this topic in different ways. First of all, it's something we hardly ever hear about. Non-interference. It's a very strange idea. In a world where we're constantly being taught how to win friends and influence people, how to sell your idea, how to be a better negotiator, how to actually be more influential. One of the very fashionable professions nowadays is to be an influencer. Oh, you want to influence? Want people to be different from the way they are. Change their behaviors, change their thinking, change their attitudes. But do you really know if that's best for them? Are you really sure? So it's quite a rare thing for anyone actually to be talking about non-interference. But there's something very relaxing about non-interference, isn't there? Not having to take on this burden of having to fix everyone, change everyone, improve everyone, even help everyone. It's okay. So before I go further, I'm just going to leave you for a minute or two. What does non-interference feel like to you, mean to you? Is there anything here worth exploring? Is there any value in this idea, this teaching, this concept of non-interference? Just stay with it for a minute. And just to get a little bit of feedback whenever you're ready. And share with me in the chat if you like. What does it feel like? What does non-interference feel like? Staying in our lane. Spaciousness, agape, accepting and understanding free will, freedom, flow. It's like letting everyone be. Aligning, being in harmonious existence. The question is, what does non-interference mean to you? What does it feel like to you? What is this idea of non-interference? How do you respond to the idea of non-interference? And by the way, it doesn't always have to be positive. Whatever thought comes is fine. Feel comfortable, minding our own business, peace, being non-judgmental, not being touchy about other people's right and wrong, liberation, live and let live, tuning into our essence, lightness. Who love you think interfering into your personal space is fine. Yeah. To be comfortable with people not complying with your suggestions and views. Yeah, non-interference. Healthy indifference. What if help is sought by someone? Yeah, it's a question for you, not for me. You have to ask yourself. Accept the way they are. Let live. It sounds indifferent. Set free. It's good, but sometimes we feel we should get the benefit of it. We feel all should get the benefit of it. Letting life be is such a freedom. It feels so light. Concentration with wisdom. You do your thing, I do mine. Impartiality. Silence and my inner childish behavior. Trusting the process. It unhooks me and liberates a lot of energy. Non-judgment, non-controlling. Perfect way of life. Not trying to accelerate someone's path from darkness to light, even though I feel compassionate. It means believing and trusting the person and situation. Accepting everyone 100%. Feels like you have your own mega highway, no traffic. Allowing to just be. Good. Just wanted to check in. And there's no right and wrong answer, of course. So if you don't resonate with the idea, that's also fine. If it confuses you, that's also fine. I want to expand this idea of non-interference. It's not just non-interference with the lives of others. It's non-interference with your own life. Non-interference with this moment. What's that like? Can you see how interfering is coming from a certain basis of I know better? I know better. It shouldn't be like this. Oh, really? Yeah, it shouldn't be like this. It should be. You should be different. This should be different. I should be different. Non-interference. Personally, I have found tremendous power in this attitude of non-interference. That doesn't mean I don't do what I do. I still do it. I just don't have the assumption that I know what's best for you. I can't know that. Somebody wants to join my course. Nithya, should I join your course? I can give them information about my course. But should they join my course? I can't say. That's something they have to decide. I can only share what I'm offering. Should you join it? Should you not join it? Mine, not sure, not a sure thing. It's interesting that my favorite definition of love also has a similar resonance, similar meaning. My favorite definition of love, the word agape from the Greek language, agape. Agape means to let be. When you love someone, when you love something, you can let them be. Let them be. You love this moment of life, you can let it be. When you have that moment flash in your heart of, that's the same moment you let them be. When it's a sense of I despise my family. That's when you want everyone to change. They should have changed yesterday. So when you love someone or something, you can let it be. Why? Because somewhere there's trust. Somewhere there's a deep trust. The Christian mystics say that there are two forms of prayer. I'm sure there are many more, but at least two. There's the kind of prayer where you're asking for something. Petitionary prayer. And there's a kind of prayer where you say, let thy will be done. As thou willest, thou willest. Let it be the way you will. Let thy will be done. Whatever is meant to be, let it be. It actually is a different kind of prayer. It's a very powerful kind of prayer. So there's a kind of prayer of asking, and there's a kind of prayer of trusting. And the asking kind of prayer is coming from an assumption that you think you know what's best, isn't it? Please make this happen. Please heal this person. Please give them a long life. Please make sure I'm not fired from my job. Please make sure my son gets good marks in the exam. This is the kind of prayer of asking. You seem to be very certain that you know what's best. All right. And it happens or it doesn't. And there's another kind of prayer, which is the prayer of trusting. I'm not trying to say that one kind of prayer is better or worse. I'm just giving you the different kinds of prayer, and then you can see what sense to make with it. And I experience this kind of prayer as a form of really relaxing and trusting. Something has supported me my whole life. Something has supported everyone and everything, always. Why would that not continue to support? Even though it may not make sense to me sometimes. So let thy will be done. Thy is that underlying intelligence that animates everything. Let thy will be done. Grand overall design, GOD. I noticed some of the most powerful retreats and talks I've ever given. At least to my mind, they felt powerful. Was when I meditated on this idea of non-interference. Non-interference. Imagine giving a talk where your aim is not to influence anybody. Normally, we're trying to give a talk to create some kind of a change, right? People should feel better, something should happen. But imagine giving a talk where even that's off the table. Imagine offering something where you're making no assumption about how people should and shouldn't think, should and shouldn't feel, should and shouldn't behave. There's something really powerful there. non-interference. Non-interference with love. Agape, to let be. I love you so much that I can let you be, that I can trust you to be the way you are, instead of assuming I know better. For some reason, I'm remembering the story of Winston Churchill. He used to address the nation during World War II on the radio. He used to address the whole nation, and the whole nation would eagerly listen to his update. And it was a set time of the week, and he would address the nation. He'd be on BBC radio. And one particular time, he had to go to the radio station, and his official car had some problem. So he just took a taxi. He just hailed a taxi and said, listen, I need to get to the radio station. And the taxi guy, for some reason, didn't recognize it was Winston Churchill. He says, sorry, can't go. So Churchill said, why not? He said, sorry, I've got to listen to Churchill on the radio. Can't go. Churchill's very impressed. This man doesn't want to take him because he wants to listen to him on the radio. He doesn't realize that he's the man who's going to be talking on the radio. Anyway, so Churchill plays along and says, all right, at least take me as far as you can. And then, you can drop me off. So the taxi driver agrees to take him part of the way. So I can't take you all the way because I have to listen to Churchill on the radio. So Churchill is very impressed. This man is so patriotic and he's so eager to listen to him. He hasn't even recognized him. So anyway, they get to a certain point, and whatever he's supposed to pay the cab guy, Churchill paid them a lot more than that. Gives him a nice big tip. And the man looks at him and says, you know what? Hell with Churchill. Come, let me take you. Hell with Churchill. I love that story. So there's something really powerful about non-interference. It's great power here. Why this big urgency to want to change? Everybody seems to want to change everybody. Let's change. Let's change their diet. Let's change their way of thinking. Let's change their way of living. What is this big thing that we have? Everybody should change. Their thinking should change. Their beliefs should change. Their actions should change. Their attitudes should change. Wow, it's a big project, wanting everyone to change. Secretly knowing that we ourselves have had the hardest time a single thing. Dear God, please save the world from those who are trying to save the world. What's it like to be in the presence of someone who's very sure you need to change in some way? What's it like to be in the presence of someone who's not who has no agenda to change you, who has no interest that you should be different from the way you are? and they just receive you, which is why I say non-interference with love. It's not just non-interference as a kind of indifference. It's non-interference with love. So can I receive you without feeling very adamant in some way that I need to change you? Something has to change. Can you allow in this moment? Can you meet this moment of life without trying to change it? Can you, for one micro moment, give up your plan of trying to influence or change or improve this magical moment? So where this really gets interesting is when you turn this lens onto yourself, non-interference in your own process. Somehow you learn to walk, somehow you learn to talk, somehow you learned all these skills to survive in this crazy world. It all seemed to happen by itself in a way. Why would you not trust this process? When effort is needed, effort will show up. When non-effort is needed, non-effort will be there. When action is needed, action will be taken. When stepping back is needed, stepping back will happen. Why would you not trust that? So can you allow yourself one moment where you're neither trying to change or influence or interfere in anybody else's process or your own process or this moment of life? Can you practice this triple non-interference? Not interfering in others' process, in your own process, and this moment of life for even one micro moment. See what happens. For me, a beautiful example of non-interference with love is the relationship between the sun and the earth. The sun radiates its light and its warmth. At the same time, it does not give instructions to the earth on how it should behave and what should be happening. It doesn't interfere with the earth. It just radiates its light and its warmth. This is non-interference with love. Meanwhile, miracle upon miracles are happening on the earth. All the sun is doing is radiating light and warmth. Suppose I give you a different, just consider, because we're kind of brainwashed into the person who makes the biggest ripple, the biggest impact is the most successful, right? That's the person who comes and touches 1,000 lives, 1,000,000 lives, 1,000,000,000 lives. That's the most successful person. Person who establishes a big business and achieves big things, has the biggest social media account. Most news channels have covered this person. That's the impressive person. This is how, at some level, we are conditioned. But suppose I give you a different, totally different lens, and I say, the one who manages to get through this lifetime with the least amount of interfering in the process of others. Suppose I say that is a very successful lifetime. Just check what that thought does. Can you get by this life the least amount of interfering, least amount of imposing what you think is best? Different way of looking at it, unfamiliar way of looking at it. There's a quote by Arthur Schopenhauer. It is a vast dream, dreamed by a single being, but in such a way that all the dream characters dream too. Hence, everything interlocks and harmonizes with everything else. It is a vast dream, dreamed by a single being, but in such a way that all the dream characters dream too. Hence, everything interlocks and harmonizes with everything else. This idea of non-interference is very strongly lived by a teacher called Shelley Trimmer. Shelly Trimmer was a great mystic, disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda. And he stepped away from the traditional organization, the Self-Realization Fellowship, and he continued his own practice. And this was one of his main mottos, non-interference, which is why not many people discovered him. And he was very humble. So when people would, even though he was a great mystic and he had had profound realizations, he never tried to pose as a big teacher. And somebody asked him, I have so many questions I've been waiting to ask you. And Shelley would say, fire away. I'm filled with useless information. Swami Kriyananda considered him one of his important teachers. And he said that Shelley Trimmer was someone who really seemed to have struck a balance between mystical life and everyday life. He didn't let his mystical realizations distract him from his everyday responsibilities. In fact, when he met Paramahansa Yogananda, Yogananda asked him to become a monk. And Shelley Trimmer said no. He said, why? He said, I've seen my future. I'm meant to marry someone. So Paramahansa Yogananda said, okay, let me get back to you. So he he consulted with his masters, and next day he said, okay, you become a monk for some time. Then later on you can marry who you have to marry. So I like the teachings of Shelley Trimmer because they're very unconventional in many ways. They really challenge the normal ideas we are taught by most mainstream spiritual teachers and organizations. It's nice to be challenged sometimes. It's nice to get a totally different perspective on God and life and karma and energy and consciousness and intuition and astrology and everything. Shelley Trimmer was one of those people. And I think one thing I've learned from him is to be unabashedly yourself. You don't have to fit into any mold necessarily. So what's it like for this attitude of non-interference with love to come into your way of looking at the world, your way of relating with the world? Would you be willing to take this on as an experiment? Non-interference with the people around me, non-interference with my own process. Would you be willing to do an experiment? Shelley Trimmer, not Sally Trimmer. There's a book called An Infinity of Gods, which is one of the few books on his teachings, because he was very, he didn't make a big show of himself. So it was quite hard to meet him, and it was quite hard to get any teachings out of him. In fact, he wrote a poem which was discovered after he died. It was lying on the floor of his carpentry workshop. And the author says he suspects it was purposely put on the floor. Shelley Trimmer did not want to give the In fact, I think I have the poem. Let me read out the poem. So, Shelley never wrote any books, but he did leave behind one piece of writing, a mystical poem that summarizes his perspective on the big question, how did it all begin? He never actually distributed this work. Rather, it was found on the floor of his workshop by my friend, Steve Cozy. I've sometimes wondered whether there may have been more than meets the eye to that seemingly chance discovery because of Shelley's ethic of non-interference, touched on earlier in this book. That is, of not imposing one's teachings on another. However, if others would happen to find or request that teaching, that is their free will. That's a different matter altogether. Knowing how important that principle was for Shelley, it's reasonable to think he could have left the poem where it was likely to be found as a way to assure the least possible interference in other people's lives. But at this point, we'll never know for sure. This is the only spiritually oriented work Shelley committed to writing during his long life of teaching. Means that it was something important to him in terms of encapsulating his views on these weighty matters. The terminology of this poem is equally Kabbalistic as it is yogic. Kabbalistic would be the Jewish tradition. Maybe I can read the explanation to the poem before I read the poem itself. The passage describes the existence of countless individual beings or spiritual entities. The one great being that we normally call God, or what Shelley and Yogananda referred to as a cosmic dreamer, did not create us. Nor is he our father or mother. Rather, he is more akin to a brother or a sister. As for the gender-specific language Shelley has used, it's important to remember that this was written before conventions of these matters changed what they are today. Those familiar with Indic philosophy will notice that Shelley's perspective falls into the dualistic perspective associated with Sankhya philosophy, which holds that there are indeed individual spirits in the universe. This is a view which stands in contrast to the non-dualistic Vedantic school, which contends that all appearances of diversity or separation in our world are just illusions. Or, as one contemporary spiritual teacher puts it, behind all these masks, there is really just one us. But Shelley's viewpoint is different, but subtly so, and calls a line from the popular 90s song, "What if God was one of us?" To Shelley, we are all divine beings. We are all self-existent ones, and God really is just one of us. The difference is that God has attained a far greater degree of balance than any of the other spiritual beings in existence. In this poem, Shelley suggests that we've chosen to enter God's creation, his memory banks, the records of his cosmic dreaming. In doing so, we benefit from the lessons, the challenges, the beauties that this vast dream offers. The problems arose when we became lost in that creation, a development commonly depicted in some legends as the fall. In the Gnostic tradition, that process of enmeshment is expressed through the story of Adam and Eve. In the Hermetic system, this is conveyed in the image of Narcissus becoming lost in his own reflection. As a result of accumulating karmas coupled with degenerating states of consciousness, we sank progressively further into the levels of God's dream. And in the process, we completely forgot our true nature as self-existent ones. Yet there are spiritual beings called bodhisattvas in the Eastern tradition who willingly descend through the levels of the cosmic dream to teach others and help all of us fallen gods, fallen angels, escape our delusion and awaken to our true natures. Shelley remarked that no one is ever truly lost. In fact, by merit of our presence within God's cosmic dream and our being guided along its pathways, we will all eventually reawaken and stand hallowed by the blissful countenance of balanced being. Self is forever reflecting upon its own nature. The self is forever folding back upon itself in varying degrees of balance. This is the true meaning of the Ouroboros, the ancient symbol of the snake eating its own tail. Shelley explains that balance is not the natural state. Imbalance is. For some, this may seem like an unorthodox notion, but it's useful to remember just how many spiritual and mythological traditions, including the Old Testament, describe chaos as a primordial state. It is only later that the supreme being or divine principle brought order out of chaos, and Eden came into being. How interesting. What a different perspective. Disorder, imbalance, or chaos is a natural state. Kind of makes sense, isn't it? Let's read the poem by Shelley. Before the beginning, chaos reigned in the infinities. Countenance beheld not countenance. In balanced equilibrium, creation followed creation in unsustained furies. Until one brother held forth the vestments of honor, in his essence, the maze of self was solved. In him, countenance beheld countenance in balanced glory. Bliss flowed forth in undulating waves of joy. Bliss flowed forth in undulating waves of joy. The sustained spiral of creation hewed forth into being. The brothers flocked to pay homage and obeisance before the master. The wave of bliss spread unto all willing, that they might sup upon the crystalline dew. They descended into him. It's so interesting that this morning I was reflecting on this popular idea of ascended masters. And I was thinking that actually all of us here are descended masters. And it's so interesting he's talking about descended. I had this thought that, we're all descended masters. We have chosen to forget our glory. They descended into him and moved about the pathways to behold the law of the maze. Brother communicated unto brother the golden essence of truth. Countenance beheld countenance. In the splendid visage, how do you pronounce that? Visage of balance. Brothers became lost in the maze. Others descended to lend aid. The sustained creation was maintained in balance against the folly of the fallen brothers. Sustained creation shall remain sustained until all brothers in infinity stand haloed by the blissful countenance of balanced being. This is the poem by Shelley. Countenance beholding countenance is repeatedly used in this poem. It's a terminology from the Kabbalistic book of concealed mystery. It refers to the seemingly dual nature of the self. The word countenance essentially being synonymous with consciousness. Consciousness beholds consciousness. So if you're all these What phrase do we use? Yeah, if you're all these divine beings or self-existent ones, and God is really just one of us. Now, what are you going to go around interfering? Who are you going to interfere with? Can you really be sure that you know what's best for somebody if you look at it from this point of view? God's in clever disguise. So today we brought in a rather subtle and advanced teaching, which not everyone will immediately resonate with or understand, but nevertheless, non-interference with love. Non-interference with love. Non-interference with love. The name of the book I read from is called An Infinity of Gods, Conversation with an Unconventional Mystic, The Teachings of Shelley Trimmer, by Ray Grass, Grasse, Ray Grass. It's not a very easy to find book, but yeah. It's got some very unique perspectives on life, as you must have already noticed from what I read. So maybe the highest teaching that anybody can offer you is be as you are. Be as you are. Be as you are. Don't assume that you need to be different, more like somebody else. I like to think of this as a wide universe, not a narrow universe. In my way of looking at things, this is a wide universe, which means there's plenty of elbow room for us to each have our own experience. We don't have to feel confined. We don't have to feel everybody else has to think like us, believe like us, behave like us. Not necessary. This whole idea that society should change, the world should change. Well, if that's really calling you, then go ahead. I can't even, why would I interfere with that? But just know that that's not the only way. That is a way. And check if it's really coming from inside of you or it's something you've been conditioned to believe. Unless so-and-so changes, nothing can happen. So check to what extent that resonates with your innermost being. And if it does, by all means, go ahead. So from a foundation of non-interference with love, now see what intentions come up. We've been spending the last few minutes of our daily practice in intentions. So from a foundation of non-interference with love, knowing that it's a wide universe, we don't have to encroach on each other. Now see what's most expansive, what's most energizing, Could you allow yourself a single moment of not interfering with anyone or anything, including yourself? Not even assuming peace is better than restlessness. Balance is better than imbalance. Commitment is better than non-commitment. Walking the talk is better than hypocrisy. What happens when you don't assume these things? You're entering into a far more miraculous reality, which is not just two-tone, black and white. And this is really a very unique universe because it's full of paradoxes, such as the less I try to change you, the less I try to interfere with you, the more magically, the more powerfully you transform. This is very remarkable. I'd gone to Korea, and between North and South Korea, there's something called the DMZ, demilitarized zone. It's a few miles wide, and it runs across the length of North and South Korea. And it's full of landmines and it's full of booby traps, so no one dares go there. As a result, it has the most beautiful ecosystem in the entire area. It has the most amazing trees, the cleanest water. It has the most biodiversity in terms of birds and other animals. So by not interfering, that's become the best part of Korea. In fact, we got these bottles of water called DMZ. I said, why is it called DMZ? Because the purest water comes from the DMZ, demilitarized zone. So that has been today's session on the power of non-interference. I hope I did not interfere with your process. I hope I did not convince you of anything. Otherwise, I would have interfered. Non-interference with love. Beautiful. Thank you all for being with me. Be well. Lots of love. Goodbye.